Ladies and gentlemen, when a woman rises and begins to speak with conviction, the atmosphere shifts. Her words are not ordinary. They are carriers of vision, carriers of destiny, carriers of transformation. Leadership is not defined by a title, it is defined by a voice. And when a woman finds her voice, the world has no choice but to listen. To speak like a leader is not about volume, it is about value. It is not about how loud you shout, about how deeply your words penetrate. Leadership is not just standing in front of a crowd, it is standing in your truth and declaring it with courage. Even when trembling, a leader's voice does not bow to fear. A leader's voice carries authority because it is anchored in authenticity. Power of a woman's words is not in rehearsed perfection. It is in her raw honesty, her tested wisdom, and her unwavering faith. When a woman speaks like a leader, she doesn't just echo what has already been said. She ignites new possibilities. She paints pictures of hope when others only see despair. She speaks life into dry places. She sets order where there is confusion. She steadies hearts when storms rage. Your voice is more than sound. It is strategy. It is a tool for healing, a force for unity, a command to destiny. When women rise to speak like leaders, they declare not only who they are, but also who others can become. So, woman, lift your voice. Don't whisper when you are meant to roar. Don't silence yourself for the comfort of others. Speak with clarity, speak with conviction, and speak with courage. Because leadership is not only seen, it is heard. And the world is waiting to hear you. There comes a moment in life when you realize that leadership has very little to do with what is written before your name or stitched on your office door. Leadership is not measured by the size of your paycheck, the length of your arrêt sommet, or the sound of applause from people who barely know your worth. Leadership, at its core, is not about titles. It is about truth. It is about standing in the fullness of who you are, speaking from the depth of what you know, moving with the conviction of what you believe. A title can be handed to you, but truth is something that must be lived, tested, and proven. Many people chase after recognition, longing for positions of power, thinking that authority flows from a label. History has shown us time and again that the greatest leaders were not always those who had crowns upon their heads or plaques on their walls. Some of the most powerful voices the world has ever heard came from those who were overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. They were not validated by the world's applause, but they carried a truth so undeniable that no one could ignore them. Truth is what gives a voice its authority. You can have a title and still be powerless if there is no truth behind your words. You can have an office and still be empty if you are speaking lies to please people rather than truth to guide them. On the other hand, you can be nameless, faceless, and unknown, yet when you speak truth with courage, people stop in their tracks, hearts are stirred, and change is ignited. Authenticity is the bridge between your voice and your impact. People know when you are pretending. They can feel when your words are hollow. They may nod politely, but inside they are unmoved. Yet when you rise to speak out of the furnace of your own experience, when you testify of the lessons you learned in the midnight hours, when you dare to stand transparent about your struggles and victories, that is when people lean in. That is when your words transcend information and become transformation. Let me remind you of something vital. Truth is not always comfortable. In fact, truth will often confront challenge and convict before it comforts. Leadership requires the boldness to say what needs to be said, even if it is unpopular. True leader does not twist their words to fit into the fragile boxes of people's expectations. They do not shrink their voice because it might offend someone's convenience. Instead, they understand that their responsibility is not to entertain, but to enlighten, not to flatter, but to free. Truth demands courage, because the moment you open your mouth and speak with conviction, opposition will rise. But remember this, resistance is confirmation that your voice carries power. Leadership that flows from truth has endurance. Titles fade. Positions shift. Crowns fall. Offices are temporary, but the impact of truth remains long after you are gone. Truth echoes across generations. The words of a leader who speaks truth outlive their titles and continue to shape hearts long after their names are forgotten. That is the kind of leadership that cannot be silenced, bought, or erased. Some of you have been waiting for recognition before you dare to lead. You have been telling yourself, when I get that promotion, then I'll speak. When I earn that degree, then I'll step out. When they finally call me by the right title, then I'll lead. But let me tell you, leadership is not something you wait for. It is something you live now. If you are waiting for a title to validate your voice, you will always be late to your purpose. Your authority is not hanging in the hands of men. It is resting in the truth you already carry. The power of your voice is not in the label they give you, but in the truth you release. Speak even when you feel small. Speak even when you are outnumbered. Speak even when the title is missing, because leadership has never been about labels. It has always been about legacy. And legacy is written not by what people called you, but by what you stood for. The greatest leaders are those who understood that titles may open doors, but truth keeps them open. Titles may introduce you. Truth will keep people listening. Titles may decorate your arte summe, but truth will inscribe your influence in hearts. You may carry a title that looks impressive, but if your words are void of truth, no one will remember what you said. On the other hand, if you speak truth, your words will burn into the souls of those who hear you long after they have forgotten the room, the stage, or even your name. To speak truth is to lead with courage, compassion, and conviction. Courage, because truth demands that you risk rejection. Compassion, because truth without love becomes harsh and destructive. Conviction, because truth requires you to stand firmly even when you are pressured to compromise. These three, courage, compassion, conviction, give your voice weight that no title can ever match. So let me ask you, what truth do you carry that the world needs to hear? What wisdom have you buried under fear of rejection? What words have you silenced because you thought you were unqualified? You must understand that your authenticity is your qualification. Your honesty is your authority. Your lived experience is your degree. And when you speak from that place, you are leading whether you have a title or not. When you rise in truth, the world takes notice. Doors swing open not because of a label, but because of the undeniable force of authenticity. People are drawn to leaders who live what they speak. They are inspired by voices that sound like life, not rehearsed scripts. They are changed by words that cut through pretense and meet them in the core of their humanity. A leader's voice is defined by truth, not titles. Do not diminish your voice while waiting for recognition. Do not silence your truth while hoping for applause. The very thing you are waiting for may only arrive when you begin to speak. Your voice is not an echo, it is a sound of transformation. And the world is waiting not for another title holder, but for a truth teller. So rise and speak. Speak with the confidence that your voice matters. Speak with the courage that your words carry power. Speak with the conviction that leadership has already been placed in you. Remember, title can be stripped away, but truth can never be taken. A crown may slip from your head, but the words you speak in truth will stand firm. Positions may change, but your influence will endure. There is a temptation in our world to believe that whoever speaks the loudest must be the one with the greatest authority. We live in a culture where noise is mistaken for influence, where volume is confused with vision, and where shouting is often mistaken for strength. True leadership, true influence, true power is not found in how loudly you speak. It is found in the weight of what you say. Impact will always be greater than volume. You can raise your voice to the highest pitch, and still people may walk away unmoved, unshaken, unchanged. When you carry impact in your words, you don't have to shout. You don't have to beg for attention. People will lean in, not because of your volume, because of your value. When impact is present, your words travel beyond ears and into hearts. They go deeper than the sound. They penetrate the soul. Noise gets attention, but impact brings transformation. Volume can stir a moment, but impact builds a movement. Volume makes people hear you. Impact makes people remember you. That is why we must shift our focus. Instead of asking, how can I be louder? The real question is, how can I be deeper? How can I speak with such clarity, such honesty, such authenticity, that my words will not evaporate with the wind, but echo through generations? Think about it. Life itself teaches this lesson. Thunder roars across the skies with great volume, shaking the windows and startling the ear. Yet after a few seconds it fades, but a seed small and silent planted into the ground has no sound at all. And yet over time, that seed cracks the soil, grows into a tree, gives shade, provides fruit, and lasts for decades. Volume is thunder, but impact is the seed. One is loud for a moment, the other is transformative for a lifetime. There are voices that scream for attention, and there are voices that carry substance. The world does not need more noise. The world needs words that heal, words that inspire, words that guide. People are already overwhelmed by the endless noise of social media, by the shouting of politics, by the clamor of comparison. But in the midst of that noise, the most powerful voices are often the ones that speak with calm authority, with measured strength, with undeniable impact. To create impact, you must first be rooted in truth. Volume can be fabricated, but impact cannot be faked. You can mimic passion, you can imitate confidence, you can copy the tone of a leader. But if there is no truth anchoring your words, they will crumble like dust. People may clap for the performance, they will not carry anything home from it. Impact does not come from performance, it comes from authenticity. Some of the greatest leaders in history were not necessarily the loudest in the room. They did not always speak with thunder. They spoke with clarity. They spoke with vision. They spoke with conviction. Their words carried weight, not because they screamed them, but because they lived them. Their voices did not echo because of microphones or platforms. They echoed because of alignment. Alignment with purpose, alignment with truth, alignment with courage. That is the beauty of impact. It is not about how many people hear you in the moment. It is about how many lives are changed after the moment. A loud speech may trend for a day, but a word of impact will last for a lifetime. Loudness fades, impact lingers. Loudness impresses, but impact influences. Loudness fills a room, but impact fills a heart. We must understand that impact begins in silence long before it is heard in speech. A leader who carries impact has spent time in reflection, in struggle, in growth. They have wrestled with their own doubts, fought their own fears, and carried their own scars. That is why when they speak, their words carry a weight that volume alone could never produce. They don't need to scream because truth amplifies itself. They don't need to perform because authenticity carries its own power. They don't need to shout to be noticed because impact always finds its audience. Think about a whisper. Sometimes the softest whisper can silence the loudest room. When someone leans in and speaks with weight, people hush because they know there is substance coming. That is impact. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it. Volume begs, but impact draws. You must never underestimate the power of your quiet strength. You may not be the loudest voice in the meeting, but if your words carry truth and wisdom, they will outlast the noise. You may not have the platform others have, but when you speak with authenticity, the right ears will hear, the right hearts will respond. Do not confuse being overlooked with being ineffective. Sometimes the most impactful work is done away from the spotlight in the quiet moments of guidance, encouragement, and counsel. Impact is what makes a leader remembered, not how much noise they made. If volume were enough, then the loudest voices would always be the greatest leaders, but history tells us otherwise. The world has had plenty of noisemakers. It is the truth bearers who shift nations. It is the visionaries who may not have spoken often, but when they did, the world stopped to listen. It is the healers whose words calmed storms inside broken hearts. It is the encouragers whose whispers lifted people from despair. That is the essence of impact. It is subtle, but it is seismic. Impact requires discipline. Anyone can raise their voice. Not everyone can raise their standard. Anyone can make noise, but not everyone can make meaning. Impact is born when your life and your words are aligned. If your words inspire, but your life contradicts them, you may stir a crowd for a moment, but you will never build a movement. Impact is not only in what you say, it is in who you are. So stop chasing volume. Stop comparing your voice to those who seem louder. Stop silencing yourself because you think you don't sound as powerful as someone else. Remember, sound fades, but substance remains. Focus not on how loudly you can speak, but on how deeply you can touch. Impact does not require you to be the loudest. It requires you to be the most authentic. When your words carry truth, when your voice carries wisdom, when your heart carries compassion, you don't need to shout to be heard. People will find your voice. They will remember your words. They will carry your message, because impact will always be greater than volume. And so I say to you, choose depth over noise. Choose substance over show. Choose influence over impression. Don't just speak to be heard, speak to be felt. Don't just make sound, make change. Don't just leave noise, leave a legacy. Because when all the noise has faded, it is the impact that will remain. Authority is one of those words that people often misunderstand. Many think authority is about position, about status, about holding a badge or carrying a title. They think authority comes when someone else validates you, when an organization approves of you, when society recognizes you. But true authority is not borrowed. It is not manufactured. Real authority is not found in a job description or in a title that can be taken away. Real authority is rooted in courage and authenticity. Courage is what allows you to stand when everything around you is trying to make you sit. Courage is what makes you speak when silence feels safer. Courage is what pushes you to act when fear whispers, stay where you are. And authenticity is the power of being unapologetically yourself, of refusing to wear a mask to impress, refusing to compromise your values for acceptance, and refusing to become a copy when you were born to be original. When you combine courage with authenticity, you step into a level of authority that no man can give you and no man can take away. Authority is not about how many people clap for you. It is about how firmly you stand in your truth. Some people chase approval all their lives, thinking that authority comes when the world agrees with them. True authority is often proven in seasons of resistance. The moment you dare to stand up, to speak truth, to move forward in conviction, you will find that not everyone will agree, not everyone will applaud, not everyone will cheer. And yet, it is precisely in those moments that your authority grows, because authority is not tested in comfort, it is tested in conflict. When you lead with courage, your voice carries weight. People may not always like what you say, but they cannot deny the strength behind it. They may resist you, but they cannot erase the influence you leave. Courage is the backbone of authority. Without courage, your voice is timid, your decisions are shaky, and your presence is fragile. But with courage, your words become firm, your actions become steady, and your presence commands respect, not because you are loud, because you are unwavering. Authenticity, on the other hand, is the anchor of authority. You cannot lead with a mask. You cannot influence while pretending. People can sense pretension. They may tolerate it for a while, but they will not follow it long term. True authority flows from the person who is genuine, who is real, who is unafraid to show both their strength and their scars. When you are authentic, people trust you. They believe you because your words and your life match. You are not delivering rehearsed lines, you are delivering lived truth. And lived truth has more authority than borrowed ideas. So many lose their voice because they try to be everything for everyone. They water down their convictions to avoid conflict. They alter their message to gain approval. They wear a mask so they can be accepted. What they don't realize is that every time you hide your authenticity, you lose authority. Every time you shrink in fear, you diminish the very courage that gives your words power. And when courage and authenticity are gone, all that remains is noise without influence, titles without substance, and positions without impact. Think about those moments when someone spoke into your life and it changed you. Was it because they shouted louder than everyone else? Was it because they carried an impressive title? No, it was because their words carried courage and truth. It was because they were real. They spoke from a place that was genuine, unpolished, raw, and true. That's why their words stayed with you. That's why their influence still lingers. That is authority. Authority is not a crown that sits on your head. It is a conviction that burns in your heart. It is the fire that makes you speak even when your voice shakes. It is the strength that makes you move forward even when your knees tremble. It is the willingness to stand alone because you know that being true to yourself is more important than being accepted by the crowd. Authority is not about being liked, it is about being real, and realness always leaves a mark. You don't need to pretend to be perfect to walk in authority. In fact, your flaws make your authenticity stronger. People do not follow perfection, they follow honesty. They are drawn to leaders who admit they have been broken, but still found the strength to rise. They are inspired by those who say, I've walked through fire, I've faced storms, I've fallen, but I'm still standing. That honesty creates connection. Connection gives your words power. Authority also requires courage, because courage is contagious. When people see you standing with boldness, it gives them permission to stand too. When they hear you speak truth without fear, it stirs something inside them that says, if they can, so can I. Your courage becomes the spark that ignites courage in others. That is the essence of influence, not forcing people to follow, inspiring them to rise. Authenticity does the same. When you show up as your true self, you give others permission to do the same. In a world where so many are suffocating under the weight of comparison, your authenticity is like fresh air. It tells others that they don't have to fake it. They don't have to pretend. They don't have to wear a mask. They can be real, and real is enough. And when you give people that kind of freedom, you earn a kind of authority that no position can ever grant. Courage and authenticity are not easy. They come with a cost. Courage will cost you comfort. Authenticity will cost you acceptance from some circles. But the authority you gain will far outweigh what you lose. Because at the end of the day, people respect is not how much you fit in, but how boldly you stand out. What they admire is not how loudly you speak, but how deeply you live. They remember is not how flawless you appeared, but how fearless and real you were. So rise in courage. Walk in authenticity. Speak your truth without fear. Stand firm in who you are, even if it costs you the approval of the crowd. Remember that your authority does not come from what they call you. It comes from what you carry. And what you carry is enough. Authority is rooted in courage and authenticity. It is not given by man, and it cannot be taken by man. It is cultivated in your heart, forged in your trials, released through your voice. Do not shrink. Do not hide. Do not compromise. Lead with courage. Live with authenticity. Let your authority speak louder than any title ever could. There is something extraordinary about the power of words. Words have always shaped the course of history, defined the destiny of nations, and carved the direction of movements. Words can wound, but they can also heal. They can divide, but they can also unite. Words can tear down, but they can also build. And when a leader speaks, their words are not just sentences strung together. They are seeds of transformation planted into the hearts of those who hear them. Leadership speech does more than communicate. It creates change. True leadership is not simply about instructing people what to do. Anyone can bark orders. Anyone can give commands. Anyone can stand on a platform and speak to be heard. But leadership speech is different. Leadership speech does not stop at information. It bursts transformation. It speaks in such a way that people see themselves differently, think differently, and believe differently. It awakens something dormant within them and causes them to rise. The speech of a leader has weight not because of eloquence, not because of theatrics, not because of volume, but because it carries vision. It does not just describe reality as it is, it paints reality as it could be. Doesn't just speak to the head, it speaks to the heart. It reaches beyond the ear and lands in the spirit. It moves people from despair to hope, from fear to courage, from stagnation to movement. The beauty of leadership speech is that it never leaves people the same. You cannot truly encounter a leader's voice and remain unchanged. Something shifts, something stirs, something awakens. Because leadership speech always carries a what if. What if you believed? What if you acted? What if you stepped out? What if you rose higher? And in that what if is the seed of transformation. History is filled with moments when the right words, spoken at the right time, shifted entire generations. It wasn't always the longest speeches or the loudest ones, but it was the ones filled with conviction, clarity, and courage. A single phrase can ignite courage in the fearful. A single declaration can breathe life into the hopeless. Single call can inspire a movement that outlives the speaker. That is the transformational power of leadership speech. It transcends the moment and shapes the future. Transformation begins because leadership speech calls people higher. It challenges them not to settle for mediocrity, not to remain in bondage, not to accept life as it is. It dares them to believe for more, to stretch beyond the familiar, to break out of limitations. It says, you don't have to stay where you are. You don't have to live small. You don't have to bow to fear. Leadership speech confronts the excuses, dismantles the lies, and awakens the possibilities. But transformation is not only about what changes in others, it is also about what changes in the speaker. True leader speaks not from a place of distance, but from a place of connection. They speak not only what people want to hear, what they themselves have lived. They speak from the scars of their battles, from the lessons of their failures, from the wisdom of their journey. Because they have been transformed, their words carry the weight to transform others. Authenticity gives their speech its authority. We must understand that transformation through speech is not always immediate. Sometimes it is a spark that takes time to grow. A person may hear a word today and not act on it until months or years later, but the seed has already been planted. That word lingers, it echoes, rises again when the moment is right. And suddenly, what was just a sentence becomes a shift in destiny. Leaders who understand this never underestimate the power of a single word spoken in truth. Leadership speech creates transformation because it builds bridges between where people are and where they are called to be. It connects the broken with healing, the lost with direction, the weary with strength. It takes people by the hand and says, you can make it, you can rise, you can overcome. It does not just point to the mountain, it empowers people to climb it. A transformation is also created because leadership speech does not just feed emotions, it nourishes vision. Emotional hype may stir people for a moment. Vision sustains them for a lifetime. A leader's words give people a reason to endure, a purpose to pursue, a destination to strive toward. Leadership speech plants pictures of the future so strongly in the minds of listeners that they begin to live as if it is already possible. That shift in perspective, that awakening of vision, is where transformation begins. Every true leader must recognize the responsibility of their voice. Words can shape culture. Words can direct decisions. Words can heal divisions. Words can transform despair into hope. That is why leaders must speak carefully, courageously, and consistently. A leader's speech is not cheap, it is costly. It carries the power to build or to break, to transform or to destroy. That is why a leader does not use their voice to manipulate, but to mobilize. They do not speak to impress, but to impact. Transformation happens because people don't just hear a leader. They feel seen by them. They recognize themselves in the message. They hear their struggles being acknowledged, their potential being affirmed, their future being called forth. Leadership speech creates transformation because it says to the listener, you matter, you are capable, you are necessary. And when people believe that transformation is inevitable, the power of leadership speech is not measured by how many people clap in the moment, but by how many lives are changed afterward. It is not in the noise of applause, but in the quiet decisions people make when they go home, decisions to try again, to forgive, to dream, to build, to rise. That is the real fruit of leadership speech, not temporary excitement, but lasting change. If you ever doubt the power of your words, remember this. Transformation is not about being perfect, eloquent, or polished. It is about being courageous and authentic. People don't remember every line you spoke. They remember how your words made them feel, how they challenged them, how they pushed them to believe in more. Your speech doesn't have to be flawless to be transformative. It just has to be real. Leadership speech creates transformation because it is not simply about sound, it is about substance. It is not about how much noise you make, about how much life you give. It is not about impressing ears, but about impacting hearts. And when your speech carries vision, courage, and authenticity, it has the power to shift atmospheres, to break chains, to heal wounds, and to change destinies. So speak with purpose. Speak with clarity. Speak with conviction. Recognize that your voice is not ordinary. It is a tool of transformation. Use it not to echo what others say, but to awaken what others have forgotten. Use it not to keep people comfortable, but to call them higher. Use it not to impress the crowd, but to transform the individual. Because in the end, Leadership speech is not measured by how loud it was, but by how much it changed. And when your words carry the fire of truth, the courage of conviction, the weight of authenticity, they will always do what leadership speech is meant to do: create transformation. Every person walking this earth has been given something that is more powerful than money, more enduring than fame, more significant than any title or position. That gift is the voice. Your voice is not just sound, not just words formed from your lips. Your voice is a tool, weapon, a compass, a key. It is the very instrument through which your destiny unfolds. Your voice is your destiny tool. When you truly understand this, you will stop underestimating yourself. You will stop silencing yourself for the comfort of others. You will stop comparing your voice to someone else's and doubting its worth, because your voice is unique. It carries a frequency that no one else can duplicate, a sound that no one else can imitate. It was designed specifically for your assignment, for your calling, for your purpose. And until you release it, your destiny remains locked. Think about it. Throughout history, destinies were unlocked when someone dared to use their voice. Freedom was won because someone spoke up. Change was birthed because someone declared a vision. Movements began because someone refused to stay silent. Words released at the right time have stopped wars, built nations, inspired generations, transformed lives. It wasn't always armies, money, or titles that shifted history. It was voices. And if voices shaped the world, then voices are still shaping the world now. Your destiny is tied to your willingness to release your voice. Too many people bury their voice in fear. They silence themselves because of doubt, because of insecurity, because of the fear of rejection. They convince themselves that they don't have anything worth saying, that someone else can say it better, that their contribution doesn't matter. Let me tell you, destiny is waiting for the sound of your voice. Someone's freedom is tied to your words. Someone's healing is connected to your testimony. Someone's courage is waiting for the strength of your declaration. And if you stay silent, destinies remain delayed. Your voice is not limited to speeches or platforms. It is present in your conversations, in your encouragement, in your prayers, in your counsel, in the moments when you dare to speak truth to power. Every time you choose to speak life instead of death, every time you declare hope instead of despair, every time you affirm instead of tear down, you are shaping destiny, not just for yourself, but for others. Your voice is not only about what you say to others, it is also about what you say to yourself. Far too often, people sabotage their own destiny with their words. They speak defeat into their future, doubt into their potential, and fear into their path. They say things like, "I can't do this, I'll never make it, I'm not enough." And with those words, they chain themselves before they even begin. You must understand that your voice is not only the tool to unlock your destiny, it is also the tool that can lock it if misused. The way you speak about your life, about your calling, about your future matters. Speak destiny, not destruction. Speak possibility, not limitation. Speak life, not death. Your voice carries creative power. Words have always shaped reality. When you speak with conviction, with faith, with vision, you are creating a path forward. When you declare courage in the face of fear, you are building an atmosphere for victory. When you speak hope in the middle of despair, you are shifting the environment for transformation. Your destiny is not waiting for others to validate it. It is waiting for you to declare it. Using your voice requires courage. Because the moment you begin to speak destiny, opposition will rise. There will always be people who try to silence you, who tell you to stay quiet, who criticize your sound. Not because your voice lacks power, but because your voice threatens systems of fear, doubt, and complacency. You must be willing to speak even when it is unpopular, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it costs you acceptance. Because your destiny is too important to be muted by the opinions of others. Authenticity is also critical. Your voice must be your own, not a copy of someone else's. The world does not need another echo, it needs your sound. When you embrace your true voice, when you speak from your own experiences, your own lessons, your own journey, your words carry authority. People may forget polished speeches, They never forget authentic voices. Authenticity makes your words unforgettable because they are not rehearsed, they are real. Destiny and voice are inseparable. Your destiny will not be fulfilled in silence. It requires declaration, it requires articulation. It requires you to say yes with your mouth before you can walk it with your feet. Too many people are waiting for opportunities when what they really need is to release their voice. The moment you start speaking, doors begin to open. The moment you declare vision, resources begin to align. The moment you release truth, destiny begins to accelerate. Your voice also shapes legacy. Long after you are gone, it is not the noise of your life that people will remember. It is the impact of your words. A single phrase spoken in truth can outlive generations. A single declaration can echo in the hearts of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Your legacy is not only in what you do, but in what you say. Because your words carry the power to shape not only your destiny, but the destinies of those who follow you. So I ask you, what are you doing with your voice? Are you burying it in fear, or are you releasing it in faith? Are you silencing yourself because of insecurity, or are you daring to declare your destiny? Your voice is not small, it is not weak, it is not insignificant. It is a tool, a weapon, a key. And the moment you start to use it, everything begins to change. Stop waiting for a perfect moment. Stop waiting for the perfect stage, the perfect platform, the perfect opportunity. Your destiny doesn't require perfection, it requires your voice. Speak now. Speak where you are. Speak with what you have. Speak with courage. Speak with authenticity. Speak with vision. Speak because your voice is your destiny tool. And when you release it, when you dare to declare what you believe, when you stand firm in the sound that was given uniquely to you, you will see doors open that were once closed, chains break that once held you bound, opportunities rise that you never imagined. Your voice is the bridge between your present and your future. It is the key that unlocks your next season. It is the tool that builds the life you were created to live. Never underestimate the power of your sound. Never silence yourself for the comfort of others. Never believe the lie that your voice doesn't matter. Because the truth is, your destiny is waiting for your sound. Your breakthrough is waiting for your declaration. Your future is waiting for your voice. So rise and speak. Speak with conviction. Speak with courage. Speak with authenticity. Speak as if your life depends on it, because it does. Speak as if someone else's destiny depends on it, because it does. Speak because your voice is not just a sound, it is your destiny tool. And when you use it, nothing and no one can stop what is meant for you.